I'm Erica Lynn, and we all know the ocean is the most demanding environment on Earth, consistently testing the reliability and durability of our equipment. When you spend as much time fishing as I do, you know that reliable gear is essential for staying on the water. This is why I went with the Abyss battery to power my trolling motor, electronics, and outboard. The guys at Abyss Battery are rattling the saltwater industry by manufacturing performance marine batteries specifically designed for sonar, outboards, trolling motors, and electronic fishing reels. They're also Bluetooth compatible, so I found checking battery statuses right on your phone while you're out on the water is a huge game changer. To learn more about why Abyss batteries are used by the pros and factory installed by premier boat builders, visit abyssbattery.com.
Every day when we're on the road, people around us endanger themselves and others by using their phones while driving. They think they're hiding it, but we've all seen them and know exactly who they are. For instance, there's a sneak-a-peeker who darts their eyes between the road and their text. There's also the got a ticketer, looking upset because they just got a ticket for using their phone while driving. And what about the fast scroller who can't drive 5 minutes without updating their social media feeds? Or the night lighter who has that mysterious glow illuminating the inside of their car after dark? Do any of these sound familiar? If they remind you of yourself or someone you know, rethink your behavior before you find yourself becoming the fender benderer, the veering off the roader, or worst of all, the driver who killed someone. Put the phone away or pay. Paid for by NHTSA.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. So Tom HUMENIK has been my friend for quite some time now, a couple of years. And when I came up with the concept to do this podcast, I knew that he was somebody I wanted to have on an episode. It was just a matter of time, getting each other together and sitting down and doing one on waterfowl. But I got to say, he's been hunting, 10 years or so, and he's the kind of guy that can really convey the information or explain things. And I just knew I needed to talk to him when it became time that I wanted to hunt waterfowl. So I hope it's helpful for everyone. And here's the episode. Okay, I'm sitting here with Tom HUMENIK, and we're going to talk some ducks today and geese. It's a waterfowl episode. So, Tom, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? Tell me how you got into hunting.
Tom HUMENIK, been hunting since about 2010. Got into heavy public land hunting, which was it was fun and interesting too. But had a couple of guys from college that I met introduced me to the sport, and it's just been crazy ever since. It's kind of taken over my life, and can't be happier. 2 kids, married. A lot of spare time goes to waterfowl hunting, and then in the off season preparing for it. So.
Okay. Sounds good, man. How's your year been so far?
Good. Really good. I as far as numbers wise goes, not the greatest year, but a lot of ducks. And I think if you ask most waterfowlers, if you are going to choose between ducks and geese, they're going to say ducks. So we're geese heavy here in Northern Illinois. And I tell you, we had that big cold front push in October, and it pushed so many ducks down, and we got on them. We got on them hard early, and then it warmed up, and the geese didn't really get down. They're starting to trickle down now, so it should be a good January. But so far so good. But I've had better years.
So with that, and numbers being good early on with that cold and stuff like that, how's your year been as far as hunting? I know early on there was a ton of rainfall. A lot of fields were flooded up. Especially when season started and stuff like that. So, did that affect your ability to hunt, or did it possibly make it better? Because I know a lot of farmers didn't take a lot of stuff out.
Yeah, it really, the story kind of starts in May when we had them big rains. May and April, and the farmers in this area did not get the crops in like they usually do, and that led into I think they started planting in like July. Late July, even some in August, and it was bizarre. And then right around the start of the season, we had a big rainfall, which prolonged them getting the crops out, and it was kind of interesting. It really benefited the hunters who had a lot of locations because the birds were only hitting the fields that were out, and there was not a lot of fields out. So, um, kind of interesting. Kind of very very interesting year from the where the farmers were planting the seeds to when they were trying to take it out. Rain really affected this year, big time.
That's pretty interesting. I was talking to another guy that I interviewed and listened to another podcast too, and they were talking about how it had like 300% or 200% over their annual precipitation for the year, and
Yeah.
they're wearing like waders and standing in corn that's standing and like using that as a blind. Like you see the guys hunting down in the swamps and stuff like that. They're hunting like that and they're coming into the
I honestly think the first 6 hunts we did that. We There's a low spot in one of the fields we had up in Aurora, Illinois, and we cut probably about a, I don't know, 20-yard by 20-yard hole. We chopped the corn down. Farmer doesn't know, so don't say anything. We chopped the corn down, and we were really nice. We were visible. We were in the ducks worked us nice, man, and it was kind of cool because it's something we'd never done before. But that was the only way you could hunt. It was bizarre. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting the way things panned
Mhm.
out. I actually got to go out for my first time. Um, didn't get an invite from you, but that's okay. Maybe I will next year. I don't know. I'm not
Oh.
going to hold my breath. But I did go out, and it was kind of interesting. We took it out. We took the boat out, and we went out on the river. And when we were hunting, we hunted off a point on like an island, and when it wasn't the river I wanted to go on. Let's just put it that way. But it was like the first run on the boat, so it's kind of like keep it close to home, test run type thing. But
Hmm.
when we set out the decoys, I didn't even have waders yet. I'm still kind of working on that. But my buddy had the waders, and he went out and he set up the decoys for me. I kind of tossed them out to him. But he's setting them up, and he's telling me, like set them up in like a U shape or a V shape, and kind of keep it open in the middle, so it gives them a spot to draw on, and that's your point, your focal point of where you're going to be, focusing your attention. What like is there a rhyme or reason to any of that? What typical setup, and do you diversify? I know this is a huge ass question that I'm asking you here, but I mean, do you like set up a bunch of different decoys, or are you always kind of like going after what you want?
Well, let's just take your example for being on a river. And even if you're in a field, it's the wind. The wind's going to determine how your decoys are set up. You probably heard your friend talk about a U-shaped. He's wanting the U to kind of define the landing zone, and it's no different when you're in a field. But I tell you, one thing I do like to do when I'm hunting water, especially for ducks, is use a lot of decoys, especially on the far end. Kind of use the ducks where you think they're going to be landing, but have the geese kind of establish your wall around that U shape. I use the U shape a lot. I'm typically not one to just throw the ducks out and just let the birds work. I want to work that wind, and typically a lot of duck hunters kind of shy away from them hunts where there's not a lot of wind. Wind is a huge factor in duck hunting. There's no doubt.
So, what is the wind? Are the ducks going to fly a certain direction in the wind, or is it going to be just the wind gets them up and moving? Are they going to go to a spot that is established as like a feed area or something like that? How does
And
that work?
so the wind, and you made a good point there. The wind will pick them up. They'll get them off them bluebird sunny days. They ain't gonna want to get off. So the
Right.
wind picks them off that water. There's no doubt about it. But it makes it so that when you're hunting, it is a designated landing zone. And to explain, say you're looking out towards the river, the birds are coming from the right, and the wind is blowing right to left. Them birds, and I know this is going to get a little complicated here, but they're going to want to swing you and land right in front of you. So your decoys are going to, and it'd be easier, Luke, to draw it up on paper, but you kind of have to envision where the birds are coming from, what direction they're going to be flying at you, and what direction they're going to want to work in. And that all is determined by the wind. It's very, very simple, so much as that a plane wants to land into the wind.
Right.
Just like how, they want to use the wind. It's very challenging for them to land. In fact, it's very rare to see them land against the wind. They almost would fall.
So if you know a direction they're coming from, that's fine because they still may cross over you, but they're going to turn or circle most likely and come into the wind. So you want to set up your spread and play that to where you've got an advantage pointing at them when they're locking up.
Yeah, absolutely, because when you're in the blind, you can shift your hunters around. You know where they're going to be landing, and it's good for a lot of different reasons. Decoy setup, hunter orientation in the blind, where your blind's at. Your boat blind might have to turn a little bit on the shores to favor the wind in the landing zone. So it's all goes into the prep work, knowing, and two, we have to think. It's not just knowing the wind, but it's a lot of it's knowing where they're coming from. If you have a huge reservoir 5 miles east, you got to plan for them to either they're going to be coming and landing right into your spread, or they're going to have to loop around and work your spread a little bit. And in that case, you probably want to beef up your decoys a little bit.
So when you say beef up your decoys, because I seen, I know the state limit, which I don't exactly know why, and maybe if you could touch on that for me, because I don't understand why you have to have a minimum of a dozen decoys, but you've kind of talked a little bit before we started this interview about using a lot of decoys and why, but can you tell me a little bit about all of that?
It's confidence. I think, as I grow into a more experienced hunter, I think the right decoys are the most important thing. Sometimes I don't. I like to use, if I know we're going to be seeing teal, let's not put out the Canadian geese this time. Let's work teal. Let's get some wood ducks. Let's start thinking early season. Let's get some mottled looking ducks in there, some black ducks, but if it's late season and you're dealing with maybe some divers, maybe some mallards, maybe a pintail, a canvasback, you're gonna want to change your decoys up so the birds can identify when they're flying around. To touch on the limit, that rule in law was established because of PETA, believe it or not. PETA would go and occupy a lot of the public land spots, and they would sit in there, so hunters couldn't go in there. So the law states, I believe it's a dozen decoys.
Yeah, it's a minimum, I think, of a dozen.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies was telling me that, and I'm like, no way, man. Are you serious?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay,
true.
so I got to spend X amount of dollars just to use a public land blind. But it makes sense now. I mean, if you say it like that. But so I'm sorry,
most
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Most hunters have 12 decoys, so it's not a threat to them. But decoy orientation and spreads wasn't as big of a deal to me early on in my waterfowl career, but now it's strategy, and it's more analyzed, and that just comes with experience and knowledge and knowing what I'm going to see. If I'm working divers, I'm not putting mallards out. I'll put the Canadian geese out, but I'm going to make sure I got some white-backed decoys out there. When I say white-backed, basically white-looking decoys, canvasback, bluebill, redhead, something that adds some variety so they could see it. It's a lot of experience in knowing what's in your area and the temperature and the weather and what time of the season it is.
Yeah. Okay. I like the only reason I thought that was because if I was going to take out my canoe or something like that, I was going to put, just like throw a dozen decoys in there or something and get out. And I was like, man, I don't want to have to put more,
Yeah, that
But
that's definitely it. And I tell you what, you start to see a lot of hunters. I hear this all the time. I'm selling my big feet. I'm selling my big feet. I'm selling my big. Well, why are you selling your big feet? Well, I'm upgrading to Dakota, or I'm upgrading to AVNX. And I when I first started hearing that, I go, "You guys are crazy." Big feet decoys. Those are great decoys. But when you put a Bigfoot decoy against an AVNX or a Dakota, there's a huge difference. There really is, and I don't think waterfowlers mind spending a little extra money to get what a good looking professional spread looks like out there.
I think I'm gonna go the other direction on that though. I'll
Uh,
spray paint some milk jugs
yeah,
or
it, yeah, I know. And you talk to the guys who've been hunting for
yeah,
60 years, and they used to spray milk jugs. It's all preference, to believe it or not. But
yeah,
they make these decoys so nice. It's almost impossible not to spend an extra $30 and get the best looking decoy now.
right. So okay, I got another question for you then. There was a guy I saw. I don't know. I think it was like a social media post or something like that, and I think he was on Lake Michigan in a kayak, and he had like just a single line of V leading out to the kayak. And I mean,
Mhm.
is that like a realistic approach or what?
Yes, yes. If you're diver duck hunting, or gonna be getting into some old squaw, or some yeah, you probably would see some canvasback out there, but bluebills you'd see out there for sure. They travel in a line path, so that's a typical line. And it's funny you say that, because when I was first starting waterfall hunting, I said the same exact thing. Why do we have six lines? And
Hmm.
that attracts the diver ducks when they're in, and that's usually typically how they sit. So, um,
Okay.
good question, really good
Thanks.
question, good
That's a
observation.
yeah. So then you're saying it's all confidence for the like how when like I mean you see some guys that pull out with like an entire trailer like a cargo trailer full of decoys, fill up a field, and that's just like a commercial type hunt, if you will, or
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah, and they're doing that because they're not on the X per se. The geese. When we're up in Aurora, typically most of the geese are on the Fox River, and let's just divide them in thirds. A third of them are going and hitting this field northwest of the river. A third of them are hitting it southeast. A third of them are hitting just straight south. Um, what you try to do is you're waiting for them to pass you, and when you have a lot of numbers in your field, it looks like it's a big gang of geese feeding, and you absolutely need it. If you are not hunting the X, you need a lot of decoys just to get them interested, because it's very hard to pull them off their spot they've been hitting for days or weeks at a time.
so okay, that's a good way to talk about that because it transitions into my next question then. So is there scouting or something like that involved if you're going
Oh
to do that,
yeah,
or how do you go
yeah,
about that?
absolutely. I mean, if you're in these high traffic areas like Braywood or you typically don't have to do the amount of scouting we used to do back in the day. But yeah, there's times you'll catch me on a Sunday morning grabbing a coffee and going and taking a ride, seeing where they're at. And what I'll do is I'll get a map and see if I have a field in between where they're roosting and where they're hitting, and seeing if we want to go out and attack them. Um, Sometimes it's good, and sometimes I just don't have the field, and we have to go to Plan B.
Okay. So when you're talking about like Braidwood and Aurora and places like that, what's the reason behind that? Is it like a major public rest area or something, or what's
Yeah, well, back in the mid '80s, when they built Braywood Nuclear Station and LaSalle Nuclear Station, then Dresden was still there, um, and then you had the Fox River. The A lot of geese in waterfall used to travel right through this area, but these nuclear power plants changed everything for the Central Fly Zone, so much so that the southern states wanted to have it. It wasn't a lawsuit. I don't want to say it was a lawsuit, but it was a very high level complaint that they were trying to get ComEd in the nuclear stations to put hydrogen bombs out on the lake to blow off, and get some of the birds to get the hell off the lake.
Like
So they start,
the propane
yeah,
blaster things.
yeah. So and I'm not kidding you, they literally were doing that. And they wanted them to get down to Arkansas where the big dollar hunting was going on. And it was for years. In Southern Illinois used to be a huge duck and goose hunting area. But um, early 90s, when the geese discovered these power plant lakes, it was like a wall, and they stopped, and they didn't go much further than this area. That's why
And
in the past 25 years, this is the goose capital of the country. Make no mistake.
so that would be something to do with the temps of the lake because they never freeze or
Correct. Yeah.
okay. So
Correct.
it's warm enough to where they're not icing over, they can have water and they're staying there.
Yeah. These, it's just like, so me, just my location, we hunt a lot of suburb pond lakes, and that's just what we do. A lot of these birds sit on these suburban pond, areas, and we go and try to see where they're going. Well, when they freeze, it's over for us, and then we have to go to the bigger lakes like LaSalle or Braywood, and they never freeze, and they consolidate there. And there's times where there's 200, upwards of 250,000 mallards and geese on that lake, and it's really something to see. It's
Holy
something to see
cow.
watching them. Yeah, I mean, it is something that people would only dream about. It's amazing.
Hmm. So, what's your experience hunting those type of areas then? I mean, do you typically still hunt like a Braidwood Lake or something like that, or is it
You
kind of,
know,
or the
you
river?
know, yeah, it's when we landed our first two pit blinds out at Braywood, we thought it was the absolute greatest thing in the world. But I soon found out that, we were out there and there was a group to the east, there was a group to the west, there was a group, there's a lot of pressure out there. And that's where the numbers kind of helped us because we had a lot of decoys. But I would only go there if I knew it was going to be chaos. And when I mean chaos, the birds weren't exactly sure what was going on. And what changes that is snow. Snow for goose hunting and duck hunting in northern Illinois changes absolutely everything. Yeah, it disorients them. It makes it look like one big blanket across the landscape, and they are not sure where they're at. So when they see these decoys that are sticking out perfectly, um, they work you and they give you a chance, and that's where calling gets involved, and that's where your spread strategy works, and also how well you cover. If you're in a pip line, you have a huge advantage. If you're in layouts, not so much.
Why
You're
is that?
sticking out. You're elevated off the natural landscape. You're using typically white tarps in the snow. It's difficult to hide 500, 600 out there. At least I feel it is. Others may not, but um, I've always felt that when you're in layouts, you're a little bit behind the eight ball, and you got to really take a lot of time to brush your blind in and make it look really good.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, so what's your ideal hunt then? I mean, snow, cold weather, timber.
And I honestly, there's nothing more that gets me more excited than working an ice line on the river on a snowy day. You got snowfall coming. It's cold temps. You're in the waders. You got the boat. You got the goose floaters, the duck floaters, but also you're working the ice line. You got some shells, some big feet, um, century decoys standing up on it, and it just looks so sweet. And when they see it, they work you. They work you hard, and I have a hard time deviating from that that spread, man. I've had the privilege of going down and hunting in Arkansas, flooded timbers and rice fields, and that's a lot of fun too. But there's nothing better to me than shooting birds over water.
I agree. That's kind of, I don't know. I haven't really done a whole lot of it, but it seems to me like it just, when you talk waterfowl, it seems like there should be water involved.
Yeah,
It's one of
you
them
did
things, but
them cornfields and bean fields. They burn you out after a while, man. It's you wanna see some challenges, and that's a river. A river brings some challenges. There's no doubt about it.
is that what you first started hunting then was the river or?
Yeah, yeah, right there in Des Plaines, blind 5, 6, 20, 26, 24. Those were the ones that brought me up, and man, we didn't know much, and that was okay. That's why the state puts these spots out, and it allowed us to learn what was a waste of time and what was the really time to be out there, how to work a spread, what decoys you want at certain times of the year, um, and that's what's so important about public hunting. It gives people who don't always have that opportunity a chance. Um, I can remember one time where, and this is going to sound crazy, but I think this is probably our first or second year when we didn't have anything so much as a old pool raft that we had to go in the garage and blow up the night before, and it was one of the yellow and blue banana boat ones, and that's what we did. We laid our guns on there and our 12 decoys or whatever the hell we had, and I remember us pulling, and we just had fishing waders at the time. We were freezing, but that was when I learned that was when it was fun. That was the good times. When we got, if we just saw one duck work us, it was the greatest thing in the world. There's sometimes I want to come back home and kick the dog when I'm not getting my limit, but then I always have to reflect and say, hey, I remember them times when we didn't have a clue, but we were learning, and next thing you know, we shot a mallard, and next thing you know, we got a beautiful canvas back, and we really built our archive up with some great experiences that allowed us to be tremendous hunters, man. It's awesome.
How long did it take you before you got your first duck then?
It wasn't the first year. The first year I got nothing. And I'll never forget this. We had 6 geese come in at 10 yards. We shot at all of them and none left. None dropped. It was the last day of the season, January 31st, probably 2010. The next year I didn't get anything. And it wasn't until the year after that where we had a group of ringnecks swing hard left on the blind, cup up hard on the right, and we shot 2 of them. And that was my first duck, and I still got that picture.
Nice.
And that was at actually Mazonia, right off Braidwood Lake. But it took a little while. It took a lot of hard work, and that's what's so that's what makes this whole thing so great, is because it just wasn't handed to us. We went through some growing pains to get where we were at today, and it's fun.
Nice. So when you say we, you mean like you and your duck hunting crew, or what?
Yeah. Me and my buddies. We've got probably a handful of guys I hunt with consistently, and um, we all kind of were in on it together, man. We went to college, played football, and we're kind of like, well, what's next? Let's try this duck. We didn't know what to do, what's next? And we took up duck hunting, and this is right before the Robertsons came on the TV, and that was a whole nother story in itself, dealing with that effect. I mean, that was a big deal.
What do you mean that effect?
When that show came out, after that, there were duck hunters everywhere. And there was times in the first couple, probably first 3 years, where there was no one out there. It was just us. And then when that show came, next thing you know, there was that blind was filled. Everyone wanted to be like them. And you ask people who were around that time, it had a big
the Duck Dynasty effect.
It really does. I truly, to
That's
this day, stand by that. Yeah.
I wonder how many of them fizzled out, or are they all still hooked? Because
if they're anything like me, they're probably still hooked.
That's a good thing, I guess. I mean, anytime, and I know it sucks, and that's, trying to going, man, my public land is already crowded. Don't really want to see more people out there. But at the same time, I mean, you really got to think, if you don't get those people out there, you're carrying the whole burden of carrying this thing forward, and you need those people to carry it forward, to do the funding, to do the conservation efforts. And that's like, technically I bought 2 duck stamps, because when you sign it, it ruins it. And I wanted to start collecting them, being that last year I bought one, didn't use it. Somebody told me they were going to take me duck hunting. I'm not going to name any names, but so this person said they were. I bought one, didn't end up going. That was all right, because I hunted my ass off that year anyway. Did an elk hunting, deer hunting too, and I was probably burned out. I probably couldn't even handle going. But so like Sam Solhalt did the thing where he did the stamp it forward, and he bought stamps, and then you buy a T-shirt or something, he sends you another one. So I ended up with 3 duck stamps this year.
Oh no, okay. I'm trying. What is it? The mallard this year?
I don't even know. I
I'd have
got
to
them
look.
sitting.
I'd have to look. I got so
Yeah.
many of them, and I save them all too myself. But it's actually licensed. And what I used to do is I try to go get what was on the stamp. And there's a couple of years I was able to get the golden eye. I got it. The canvasback. I got it. The wood duck. I got it. The Canadian goose. I got it. But I think we had a swan in there, and then there was a couple other weird
Hey, I don't think you're gonna
birds
go
there.
get a swan.
No, no, I'm not. No.
So let's talk about you mentioned calling earlier. Um, I'm sure there's probably more than we can even unpack in this episode, but I just kind of want to know, how do you know what you're supposed to be calling, or are you identifying a bird and trying to do a distinct call, or are you doing like a generalized something as they're coming over your spread?
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk geese first, and then we'll go to ducks. Geese, I feel like, are a little bit more responsive to the call. It entices them a little bit more, not much more, but a little bit more. They're easier to call, in my opinion. Um, they have the hail call. They have more of like a grunt call, like a whine call that kind of brings them in at the end, and then they have like a comeback call. And I can't do it. I keep trying to think like I'm gonna
Mouth it.
but it's more of an obnoxious call, which kind of gets their attention when they're flying away, maybe to turn them. Ducks, you have your feed call, you have your welcome call, your greeting call, and then you have more of like a distress call too. Um, Diver ducks have a little bit more of a different sound to them. It's more of a growl. The mallard has the best call by far. It's the traditional duck call. Pintail, widgeon, they have a more of like a whistle, along with a teal and a wood duck. They have a kind of different note, but um, kind of a long answer to your question. Multiple ways to call different ducks. Um, as you grow in experience, you hear them and you learn about them, and that allows you to know what to call them. A great story. I was hunting down with these guys in the Boot Heel of Missouri, so right on the Arkansas border, and he owned an outfit out there that we'd go hunting, and he would tell me him and his brother would go and sit out there at nighttime and listen what the mallard sounded like on a full moon, and listen what the pintails sounded like, and listen what the widgeon sounded like, listen what a teal sounded like. And I thought that was awesome. They had the ability to do that. They owned a lot of acreage down there, and um, when they would get the birds rolling through, they would listen to them. They'd hear what they sounded like, and that is one of the best duck callers I've ever heard in my life, hands down. Very good duck caller, and they make their own calls too. So
So a word to the wise: if you got some private property or a place where you can go sit at night, go
yeah,
listen,
yeah.
right?
Or even if you want to go, if you really, really, really want to get into it, YouTube, utilize technology. I mean, they can tell you what how a hen reacts to a male drake call, or vice versa. It has an effect on them. But I will tell you this, as far as calling goes, um, I am not a big fan of calling too much. I think over calling will screw you. I think unless you're a very good caller, it's not going to be as effective practice as you think it's going to be.
Did,
A lot of people get so excited when they see the birds. It's the first thing they do. You can see them fumbling around on their lanyard trying to find the right call. Um, but I'll be honest with you, your location and the way your decoys look to them is 10 times more important than how you sound, because most of the times they're not really able to even hear you till the end.
so speaking of fumbling around on your lanyard, um, you got any bling bling on your lanyard?
Well,
And by bling bling, I mean you got any bands? And did you get any this year?
you ask any of my friends, any of them, I am always not there for the band. I don't know why. It's a shame. Um, Have I been on many hunts with them? Yeah, absolutely. And typically, um, I like to treat it. That's a complicated question because I've seen the worst out of people get brought out of people when a band, oh, who shot? Well, he's on the left side, but I shot on the right side. It kind of brings the worst out of people because it is the trophy. It is no, there's nothing better than shooting a band, and I I'm typically the one that kind of goes hide in the grass at the conversations. Unless I damn well know I shot the thing, you ain't gonna see me getting ruining my Sunday afternoon over a little piece of metal wrapped around the
That's
leg.
see, because I don't get the whole thing of it, and I think it was actually like Steve Ranella or somebody who said, um, and I don't even know, I don't remember if they were talking about bands, but he was talking about an elk and shooting a collared elk or like a mule deer, and the way he put it was somebody already got the best of that animal, so why would he want to shoot it? And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe there's a difference in correlation between the birds, or maybe it's just become such a status. I mean, I get why
Mm,
you get to find out how old the bird is, or at least when they banded it, and how long it's been flying around with that thing on their ankle, and where it's been. That's pretty cool.
that
But
is
other
cool.
than that, I don't know. I don't really get
Yeah.
it. But
It's when you see a hunter with bands all around his lanyard, it's like a Tom Brady with Super Bowl rings. It's like that's how the hunting community looks at it. Now, at the end of the day, does it really matter? No. Does it make you a better hunter because you shot more bands? Absolutely not, because no one goes out and band hunts. It's pure luck. You could be as unlucky. You could shoot 400 birds a year every year and only get two, like myself. There's my friend in Aurora shot 90 and shot seven so far. So it's just one of them things, man. It's just when you see a person with bands around their lanyard, um, you could tell that they're experienced, just because they've been out there a lot. Because it takes a lot of time to get them.
so you
But other
said
than that, I don't really get into the
the band, the
nah,
bandwagon.
the bandwagon, we'll call it.
But so you're talking your buddy shot like 90 ducks or whatever, and however 200 a year. What do you do with all the meat, man?
There's a place up in Aurora. We send it for like a goose jerky. Typically, like I said, hunters in this area shoot geese more. So you'll have a surplus of meat and a lot of it, and we'll send it to some houses up in. When I mean houses, like some companies up in Aurora, and they'll pack it with pork and some cheese and peppers, and you'll have like a what looks like a deer stick. The duck, now, on the other hand, I take that very seriously. I'm always willing to take the ducks, and I absolutely love cooking for people. It's kind of how I've progressed in my hunter status. I think I'm probably at the end where I almost rather go out and take pictures and show people what the experience is like, and then get the mallard and cut them up and put them on the grill, and then that's where I get my most satisfaction, when I have a perfectly cooked mallard, seasoned correctly, utilize the fat on the skin, and place it in front of someone, and then seeing them saying, "Holy cow, this is spectacular! This is an amazing piece of meat."
Nice.
That's why we do this, Luke. You know what I mean?
I
It's
do.
it's a lot of people lose sight of that, and my message to them is to rethink that.
That's my daughter today asked, or yesterday asked me, "Daddy, can we have some deer steaks?" And so I said,
Yeah.
"Sure." Got them out last night, put them on the Traeger today, and I had hand trimmed venison steaks. And as I was trimming it, was one of them things. It's like everything was coming back to me all the way from the hunt. I mean, because obviously I know the deer it came from, so I know the exact day, the instance, how the whole thing unfolded, and it was like I was reliving it as I was trimming the meat, and then to see their face, and even my wife's like, "Man, this is really good." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, it is." Isn't
It's very good,
it?
and I think that's awesome. I think that's fantastic. There's some people I know, I love venison, so there's some people I know who are big deer hunters, will swap meats, and they love how I cook my ducks, and um, really developed a strong passion in the past couple years for cooking, and
Nice.
it's awesome. Yeah.
Very nice, man.
hmm
So we're about wrapped up here, but I got to ask you though, you got any trips planned or anything like that coming up?
Uh, Typically every year we go down to Arkansas, do a flooded hunt, flood timber hunt, and then flood rice hunt. But back around last March, me and my buddies got together and said, "Hey, let's go down to Texas." Um, when we said that, we're like, "Okay, let's go to Houston, hunt diver ducks, hunt redheads," and that's kind of what I want to do. But we found an outfitter called North Texas Outfitters, and I've been following them closely the past couple of weeks, and they've been doing very good. They hunt a wide range of fields and areas on the Oklahoma and Texas border, and um, we're going to be getting into some pintail and widgeon and some trophy ducks, man, and that's going to be happening right here in 3 weeks or 2 weeks.
Nice.
January, yeah, mid-January we're going, and um, I'm excited. I really am.
So are those different ducks than what you normally get here then?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be seeing some. When I say pintail and widgeon, and you talk to most duck hunters in this area, that's our prize. We're so used to shooting mallards, we're so used to shooting wood ducks, and we're so used to shooting teal. But when you go out a little bit west, like in Oklahoma especially, you're going to have a chance of shooting pintails and widgeon, and to us, or to me at least, that is the bird
So would
as
that
far as
be
looks
like,
wise.
would one of those be your ultimate duck then, or what?
Uh, you know, um, it's got to be the pintail. It's got to be looks wise, and then I think they got a great breast on them. They really do, and their fats usually, it's just a very cookable duck. Their meat turns out perfectly. It's not a typical like a lot of times you get some ducks that the breast is really high on one end and it kind of thins out. That their meat, their breasts are typically longer. They're easier to cook. It's more like a flank steak almost. When you throw that on the grill, you throw it on, you flip it a couple times, and you're good. You're not fighting that big fat part on one end of it. But yeah, it's got to be the pintail or canvasback. I mean, those are the kings, in my opinion, hands down.
Nice, making me
Yeah,
hungry.
yeah, I know. I'm actually hungry myself.
So what would be your dream trip then?
I would love. I I'd love to go to Lake Erie, and do the diver duck scene up there. I know my friend who mounts my birds goes up to a location up there on the Canadian side, and man, you're shooting some of the most beautiful looking diver ducks at that time of the year, and the big canvas backs, the big redheads, and that would be it. Working an ice line, got that river
So
atmosphere.
would you be in like a little layout boat, or would you be in
Yeah.
a bit? Yeah.
In some cases, yes, but in some cases, not. They have actual blinds near the shore that they'll hunt, just like how we do here.
Okay, so you're not hunting
Um,
like big open water on a little tiny little.
no,
That seems interesting to me. I've seen a few of
yeah,
those. I don't know, but
I don't know about that one either.
big open water and a layout boat with a
Uh,
single V of ducks and
how does this work? You probably are saying,
yeah, a little
um,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, but the snowy, cold, um, that type of atmosphere is what my dream hunt would be, and
Nice,
always
man.
will probably will be. Yeah,
I appreciate it. And that's pretty
yeah.
much all the questions I got for you, but it's been helpful. I think I've learned quite a bit. Hopefully the listeners learned something, and appreciate you being on, man.
Oh, thanks, Luke. I appreciate it, and good luck with this. I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
Thank you. I'll see
Yeah,
you again, man.
bye now. Be and
Nice,
always
man.
will probably will be. Yeah,
I appreciate it. And that's pretty
yeah.
much all the questions I got for you, but it's been helpful. I think I've learned quite a bit. Hopefully the listeners learned something, and appreciate you being on, man.
Oh, thanks, Luke. I appreciate it, and good luck with this. I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
Thank you. I'll see
Yeah,
you again, man.
bye now.
thank you for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. If you liked this episode, please subscribe on whatever platform it is that you're listening to. Also, you can find us on Instagram at Publicly Challenged, and you can also find us at Publicly Challenged Podcast or publiclychallenged.com. So please reach out to us with any questions, comments, concerns, or maybe you'd even like to be on the show. And once again, thank you so much for listening.